There's a real threat to our skies. I'm talking about space debris, something that nobody talks about, nobody cares about, but poses a real risk to our satellites, astronauts, and even the future of space exploration. Millions of space debris are now orbiting the Earth at incredibly high speeds and could really render parts of space unusable and even cause catastrophic chain reactions. As of early 2025, there are around 8,337 satellites orbiting around the Earth. 540 are in geostationary orbits, around 36,000 kilometers away from Earth. 198 are based in MEO orbit, which is medium Earth orbits, around 2,000 to 36,000 kilometers. And we have 7,599 satellites in LEO orbit, so low Earth orbits, around 200 to 2,000 kilometers away from Earth. In this region, you can find also the Chinese space station Tiangong and the International Space Station. Also, you can find communication satellites, weather satellites, all sorts of satellites really. And so this means only one thing: our orbits are busy, and they will become busier and busier as we go on. But what is space junk? Space junk are human-made objects that serve no purpose anymore. They can be, for example, unused satellites or rocket stages, rocket parts, or even collision fragments from other collisions. Usually, when we design a space mission, we divide that into segments, and the last segment is the end-of-life segment of the mission. The main challenge is to make sure that we dispose of the satellites at the end of the mission, and one way of doing this is to deorbit the satellites from the orbit towards the Earth so that it just burns into the Earth's atmosphere. However, many years ago, this wasn't really a thing. We just cared about launching stuff into space without even considering sustainability. And so since 1957, which is the year when we launched the Sputnik 1, the first human-made object in orbit, we really didn't care much about it. Nowadays, we can find junk also on the moon or other planets such as Mars, have so much rubbish that it's just there, sitting there. We're not doing anything about it. The European Space Agency has estimated 36,500 objects greater than 10 centimeters, 1 million objects greater than 1 centimeter, and 150 million objects in the region of 1 millimeter. That is crazy. But these numbers don't really pose a threat. What really matters is the speed at which they travel. So if you take a small screwer, for example, that is not a threat really. But if it travels towards the International Space Station at 28 kilometers an hour, then that is a big issue. That can pose a real threat to our astronauts. One of the reasons why we care about space junk is because it could lead to financial losses. And because some satellites are paid by the government, so us citizens who pay taxes, then we need to make sure that these satellites are safe in space and they're not colliding with other spacecraft or other space junk. But also, if you spend lots of money building a satellite and then it just stops working and people are relying on these satellites for weather or for the GPS or even communications, then we have a big problem here. Not only that, there are also humans in space. So on board the International Space Station, for example, there are currently 10 plus astronauts at times. And so if a debris collides with the International Space Station, that could really endanger the astronauts' lives. And this happened, for example, in 2021 when a 5mm object impacted with the Canadarm2, which is a Canadian robotic arm on top of the International Space Station. Well, that created a hole into in the arm, but it wasn't a big deal because it didn't cause so much trouble and the astronauts were safe. But at the end of the day, you start thinking about that could really impact the lives of astronauts. And if we're going back to the moon, we need to make sure that our astronauts and our equipment is reliable and it's safe for us to really go back to the moon and settle there. So how do we clean up space? One way of dealing with space debris, space junk, is through prevention. One thing, for example, is the European Space Agency is developing a set of guidelines called the Zero Debris Approach, which makes sure that companies and also space agencies around the world can produce spacecraft that are sustainable and can be burnt into the Earth's atmosphere. And this is aimed to be achieved by 2030. Prevention is now a big thing. We're working also to deorbit satellites already in orbit that don't have any fuel to be maneuvered or are just not working anymore. One way of doing this is through innovation. So we're building new technologies to make sure that we can go out to space and collect that junk. One way of doing it is, for example, through robotic arms or with nets. There are so many different approaches. But the first active space debris removal mission is going to be launched soon by the European Space Agency with a Clear Space 1 mission. Even though space junk is not a big deal, not many people are talking about it, the governments are not really talking about it, you can see how that is a big issue and it needs immediate support from everyone. So if you're an engineer, a teacher, if you're just a space enthusiast, send us ideas. Give us whatever you're thinking about. The UK Space Agency is always looking about new solutions, new ideas to tackle this problem. If you're a teacher specifically with young children, make sure that you talk to them about this issue. Show them this video, show them more resources we have on our social media platforms. Show them videos from the UK Space Agency and the European Space Agency. Inspire children to take action. Talk to them about this issue, and one day they could potentially find a better solution to this growing problem. Now, space is a shared resource that we use every day for many reasons. We don't want space to become unusable, so we definitely need to work together to find solutions. If you're interested in anything related to space, follow us for more content, like this video and share it for more. My name is Mirko and this is Lunar Space. Thank you for watching.